Welcome to learning session. So far we have seen what is food security, biotechnology and modern biotechnology. We also have the question, the UPSC Civil Services General Studies previous question. Have a closer look. So that's what we have seen in the previous session. In the context of growing human population, keeping out hunger and preserving environment involves ensuring food security, which in turn depends on the three pillars of food security which we have seen: food availability, access and food utilization. The first one, food availability, depends, or you can say is a function of production. Trade and food processing are also factors. Access is physical and economic access. It depends obviously on the purchasing power of the people. Moreover, transport and markets are also factors there. When it comes to food utilization, proper food utilization means nutritional impact. The food should have a nutrition impact on the body. So how well is that food absorbed into the body for various activities we need to do? That cannot be measured by the amount of quantity which we are eating. We must make way for proper utilization. So it means nutritious food choices are important, quality and safety is important, sanitation, clean drinking water. All these factors determine food utilization. And the last one is the overall stability of the system, that is sustainability. Before coming to the question as such, let's have a wide spectrum view of agriculture. Agriculture is the single largest employer in the world, providing livelihood for around 40% of the global population. Moreover, out of the food produced, especially in the developing world, small farms, small holders with not even proper irrigation actually account for around 80% of the food produced in the developing world. So investing in these rain-fed small holders, farmers, is an important way of ensuring food security. A similar kind of question to this asked over here would be: agriculture looks to genomics for the next green revolution, or you can call it the gene revolution. Because of population explosion, undernourished people, 870 million people go hungry every day. By the way, the speed of current or the traditional plant breeding practices which in developing newer crops is quite slow. The traditional breeding practices tend to give results which are quite slow. Agriculture also accounts for greenhouse gas emission, around 60% of methane emission and 50% of nitrous oxide, N2O. And there is eutrophication or inappropriate use of fertilizers which lead to eutrophication. Like an example would be Gulf of Mexico. An inappropriate use of pesticides which pollutes the groundwater and also leads to lack of biodiversity. However, here the question specifically is about the role of plant genomics in keeping out hunger and preserving environment. What is hunger? The sensation of hunger or the lack of food in your stomach is universal, but it has major different manifestations. We have heard of undernourishment, malnutrition and all that. There is other terms like wasting. Undernourishment is actually in terms of energy intake, or 2100 kilocalories per day is the minimum which has been set. Whereas malnutrition is measured in terms of physical attributes like height, weight with respect to your age and so on. But contrary to what we learn from the media tends to project that emergencies are the major reason of hunger. However, emergencies account only for around 8%, not even 8% of the hunger victims worldwide. There are 870 million people who consume less than 2,100 kilocalories per day. Means it is more than the combined population of United States, Canada and European Union. Today, 1 in 8 people do not get enough food to lead an active life and a healthy life. It makes it the biggest risk to health in the world, greater than the combined effect of AIDS, malaria and tuberculosis. Micronutrients are also important. There is the question of hidden hunger. Whatever be the amount of food you eat, micronutrients like iodine, zinc, vitamins, minerals, iron, because that can lead to malnutrition. Here we are discussing role of plant genomics. I am Pradeep, here at Learning Session. We have the question, let's find the answer. Plant genomics has very important role to play in increasing food production and crop yield, ensuring stability, improving economic viability and productivity. Productivity, by the way, is a measure of efficiency, and efficiency is always output by input. So I hope that's very clear. And we need to reduce wastage also, which is much important in the current state, because wastage happens due to both abiotic and biotic stresses. Wastage during production, storage, transport. There is also a need to improve utilization of safe, nutritious food and genetic resources. Moreover, ensuring environmental sustainability is also important. I hope you can understand that this has been largely based on the 3 pillars of food security which we had seen. You can structure your answer in this way or in some other pattern you prefer, but the content would largely remain the same. There are various constraints which face agriculture in the path towards increasing food production. 1. Dwindling land resources. Scarce water. Abiotic stresses like inappropriate temperature, pH, heat, drought. Biotic stresses like pathogens, diseases, pest. There is also environmental degradation of resources. So marginal soil fertility reduction, all these are important problems. And there is a last one which is almost an answer you can write for any question asked nowadays, which is climate change. Daunting challenges of climate change. Genomics is a study of the genome, its structure and function. It can relate genes for a particular trait, and the traits can also be related back to the genomic sequence. There are various cases or reasons for intervention of biotechnology to solve the problems facing agriculture. The most compelling case for the intervention of biotechnology is its ability to contribute to productivity. Productivity, as already mentioned, is a measure of efficiency, which is always output by input. So it has the capacity, by relating it to traits and other ways, to improve the output and reduce the input required. Improve the output means output production, yield, and input means it's a land-saving technology. Reduce water usage, save crops from a lot of wastage by abiotic and biotic stresses. And this helps a lot. Moreover, for generating locally adapted varieties of crops, genomics gives the insight required. It can also help a lot of poor people if locally adapted varieties are developed. The basic function or the basic overview we need is that it helps understand the function or the basic functions of a plant and a crop. And this can relate to their responses to the environment and pathogens. Studying pathogen-plant relationships helps solve a lot of problems related to biotic stresses. Same is the case with abiotic stresses as well. The major tools we have for this is first relating traits, then you can say another medium for that is molecular markers, genetic modified organisms, which all of us are quite familiar with. Another tool is bioinformatics. Molecular markers are sequence of DNA, identifiable sequence, which actually flag the presence of a particular trait. So you don't have to wait for the entire plant to grow and then identify whether it is having the specific quality you were looking for. Identifying this molecular marker is enough. And this can save a lot of time in the traditional breeding practices. Specifically, in some cases, genetic modification may be required, especially in the case of developing crops which are resistant to certain pathogens and chemicals, herbicide resistance and pathogen resistance. Genetic modification, which is a deliberate transfer of genes from one organism to the other, maybe even from an unrelated species. It's mostly important in the case of where a crop species does not have major wild relatives, or the trait we are looking for, like herbicide resistance or pest resistance, may not be available in that species at all. For example, BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, it is able to produce a toxin which helps fight the pest, but it is supposed to be not so harmful for the humans, not at all harmful, that's the claim. So, genetic modification is also a tool, but it has mostly overshadowed the other non-GM tools of genomics. And there are various traits which have been so far successfully developed, like pest resistance, herbicide resistance, viral resistance, fungal resistance, bacterial resistance. Improvements like quality improvement, in the case of protein, amount of protein, oil, and so much, and value addition like nutrients, macro and micronutrient addition in the food crop is also being achieved. But with all these tools, decimation technique or variety alone cannot solve the problem of hunger and poverty. It requires multi-dimensional approach of sustainability, and moreover, locally adapted varieties which we already mentioned. Let's see the sustainable agriculture, the pillars of sustainable agriculture. Hunger is not just about quantity of food. We have already seen that. It goes hand in hand with malnutrition and undernourishment. So usage of food with better nutrient value, or usage of food which has antiseptic value, or other spices which help in digestion, can help better absorption of food to the body or help better utilization. The concept of food security has also undergone changes. Earlier it was believed that availability and production and stability of production will help achieve food security. But as we have seen, food security is a multidimensional concept and requires more other factors to be considered. So one of them is energy intake. The minimum energy requirement as specified is 2100 kilocalories per day. We have already seen that 870 million people are still deprived of that. GDP growth from agriculture is up to 4 times more effective in reducing poverty. When it comes to an environment, you've seen the 3 pillars of sustainable agriculture. Developing crops which has greater efficiency of photosynthesis, or which uses greater amount of carbon dioxide, which definitely help in sustainability. There are various other ways in which genomics can help us improve the sustainability of agriculture systems and reduce degradation of the environment. Since the amount of arable and cultivable land is limited and what is available is being lost to degradation, salinization, urbanization and so on, the scope for increasing land under agriculture is limited. Also, it is not a very sustainable option. And water resources are under severe strain. There is reduction in water table levels, and many of the rivers don't flow to the sea which they used to earlier. Of the available water which we have, almost 70% is currently being used for agriculture. So what is the scope for increasing more usage of water? It's very limited. heat and drought are also adding to the problems we face. Biodiversity is also lost. Around 75% of crop diversity has already been lost from the field from 1900. When you compare with 1900, almost 75% of the crop diversity has been lost by now. And this limits our resources for adapting to major changes in temperature and precipitation, which happens due to climate change and various other factors. In addition to that, we have the nutrient cycle and water cycle, which are also being affected by this. This also severely limits agricultural production. Adding to all this is, as I have mentioned, is the climate change challenge. Moreover, pests and pathogens are expected to create greater damage because of this. Presently, around 30 to 60% every year is being lost because of both biotic and abiotic stresses. And the most important thing you must look into this is we've already invested the scarce resources of land and water, and we lose them after they have reached the fully grown condition. So 30 to 60% loss of crops happen after they have reached the fully grown condition. That means what we have invested, the land and water, is lost by then. So reducing wastage because of abiotic and biotic stresses is effectively meaning creating more land and water. Since there is limited land resources and limited water resources, the scope for increasing production has to cope with this challenge. That is, almost on the same land, we need to produce more using lesser water. Climate change is putting even more pressure on resources we depend upon, thereby increasing risk associated with disasters like flood and drought. The farming system and the agriculture on a whole has to cope up with the challenges put up by climate change, which include changes in temperature. A rise of 2 to 3 degrees will severely impair crop production of major food crops we have. Changes in precipitation, that is, which will include changes in seasons and crop duration. There will be rise of sea level, melting of ice, glaciers, and definitely that will be a threat to coastal areas and crop areas there. There will be greater increase in the amount of carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere. And according to IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, by 2050, there will be 23% increase in the level of surface ozone level. Thus, agroecosystems that improve productivity and replenish ecosystem services behind the supply chain are needed. Here, plant genomics has a major role.